So, Huguette, I would like to ask you the next question. As author of the book, talking about bullying, is your child being bullied? You need to hear this from Huguette. Could you please share with us how we can teach our child to employ these simple, non-verbal assertive strategies that indicate to a bully that our child means what he or she said? Emotional awareness. Over to you, Huguette.
All right. Thank you so much for the question. Of course, like we mentioned before, is the first thing you want to do when you're being bullied is not to turn into a bully yourself, but you want to make the person bullying you know that you want them to stop and you mean it. So, of course, you want to tell them in a nice, right, a calm voice, right, by maintaining eye contact, tell them to you stop, right? Tell them that you need them to stop, that you don't like what they're doing. And this can even be even with smaller things, right? Even just comments that you don't like, you tell them to stop. And you keep repeating it. I think it's going to make sense to that person that you mean what you mean, right? And use simple and non-emotional language when you're doing that. Because I think the last thing you want to do when that happens to you as a child is to start crying right away. Because crying, of course, you're crying, you're showing that you're scared, like you don't know what to do, right? Try to maintain a calm voice and ask the bully to stop. And if you know the person, you know the person who's bullying you, if it's someone from your class or somebody from a class that you know, yeah, you mentioned their name. Like, let's say their name is Kevin. You say, Kevin, I don't like what you're doing. Please stop. And just say it to the person, right? Also make sure that you are not responding with so like whether it's in anger or fear, like I mentioned before. You don't want to show the bully that you're scared. You want, even if you're scared inside, just try during this time to speak up for yourself and ask the bully to stop. That's the first step. If this doesn't work, we mentioned it before, get somebody else involved. Get somebody else involved right away. And even if this works, I think it's worth mentioning it to somebody else so they know what happened. Because usually when somebody's bullying you, there's a chance that they're doing it to somebody, another person in the school. So by you standing up for yourself, you're being the hero for somebody else too, but that without even knowing it. So I would say, yes, talk to the person and then talk to someone else so they know. By someone else, I mean an adult, so they know what's going on as well.
Yeah. And of course, you get, when we said teaching, we have Dr. Edouard here with us. School meaning teaching. What you just mentioned, I would even like to go a step further. Do a role play at home. Because children, like both of you mentioned last week and today, they learn by watching. So, of course, sometimes as a child, you may tell them, they may not really relate to what you're saying. But if, as a parent, you say, okay, let's say I'm the bully, and what I'm doing to you, show me how you're going to respond. Then have the child now role play, you as a parent being the bully, and see how the child will respond, correct it in the spot, and have also the child being the bully. I believe, that will have much more impact also, because by role playing at home, psychologically, it already prepares the child. When it happens, they are not caught back, and they know right away what to do. Because you may teach them, but if they've never been in the situation, when things happen, they may either freeze or they may just forget what you said. So I don't know if Dr. Edouard or Huguette, you want to add to what I'm just saying.
No, I think Huguette, both of you just really clearly it. So there's nothing more to add to that.
Yeah. And I think before you even get to the bullying phase, it starts with comments that you just don't like, right? Learning to tell someone to stop. It can be, and that happens with my son and one of his friends actually. But like his friend was making some comments that my son thought was inappropriate, right? And what happened is that it happened one time and my son asked him to stop. But to the kid, it was just a joke. So he kept making it. And my son told him a second time, I said, I don't like it. You need to stop. Right. And then it happened in the cafeteria, and other kids said, oh, we think, because, kids make some jokes sometimes. It was about like monkeys, right? Right. So he was calling my son a monkey, and my son said, no, you don't call me a monkey. I don't like it. He told him like 2-3 times or something like that. And then in the cafeteria, when it happened, the other kids were like, no, this is racist. And then then they told someone, a grown-up who was working there in the cafeteria, and a response was like, no, just eat. And then when my son came home, my son told my husband what happened. And my husband said, okay, let's go. My husband talked to the principal, of course. And then the principal called my son and his friend, who then realized that, okay, this is so serious, because I didn't know this was going to get me into the principal's office. And then they talked to the principal there about it. And the principal told him that the next time he was going to get into trouble. And we didn't leave it there, because this is a kid whose mom likes to like drop him off here to play with my son. So my husband told the mom, and she said she doesn't even know where this is coming from. So she had a talk with the kid as well. And my son, he said he wanted a break from the kid, didn't want to talk to. We respected what he wanted. He said, I wanted him to understand that I was really upset. So I don't want to talk to him until I'm ready to forgive and move on. And we let him handle it that way. But this was a learning lesson for this kid that, okay, if someone tells you to stop, you need to stop it, because it can start with little jokes like that and turn into something really big. Yeah. So even those little things, calling names, say you don't like it.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, both the bully and the kid that is bullied, they need to understand that there is consequences.
Exactly.
In this case, the kid who was bullied now realized the consequence, because he lost that friendship.
Yeah.
And for the son also, he see that because he was able to stand up, this will repeat itself.
Yeah,
As exactly. If that the consequence would be what? It will keep on going. So sometimes you just have to show hard love, tough love, for the person to understand that
exactly.
You cross the boundaries, and it's not going to work.
Yes.
So I like that example, because the next question is actually for Dr. Edouard. Bullying can threaten students' physical and emotional safety at school and can negatively impact their ability to learn. There are a number of things school staff can do to make school safer and prevent bullying. Dr. Edouard, can you please tell us how can staff training help bullying prevention? Let's have it on the screen.
So I think the starting point will be for an assessment, right? Like a culture and climate assessment. You send a brief survey out to staff, a brief survey to students, and a brief survey to parents. And even for our little kids, like elementary age kids, you can create surveys where you're not asking them 100 questions, maybe just 3 or 4 questions that they can understand at their level, to share whether or not they feel like their school is a supportive environment, their culture and climate there is supportive. If they feel bullied, do they have an outlet to go to? So that's a starting point, right? In terms of staff preventing bullying. Also, making sure that your school has a behavior framework that everyone is aware of. So when my child was younger in school, she would tell me, oh, mommy, according to student code of conduct 2, 3, 4, 5, if you do this, this is what happens. So it's really, and I was always impressed that, oh my God, she knows it, like code of conduct, this, because the teachers at her school took the time out to meet with them and discuss the student code of conduct and what happens, what those consequences are for infractions. So that's very important for all of our staff to know and norm around what bullying is. So because sometimes we'll see like some of our staff members where they'll be like, oh no, they're a boy, they can deal with it. They can be tougher. So whether it's a boy or a girl, if it's bullying, it's bullying. So making sure that we're all normed in our response as the adults, right? That's another one. Also making sure that we are training staff members to know what bullying looks like. So sometimes you see with our veteran staff members, they don't necessarily understand what cyberbullying is. Oh, I'm not online, I'm not on social media, but making sure they know that when a child comes in and say, hey, Ms. So-and-so, this person posted about me on Twitter last weekend that, you know, I stole this from the store, that you see that that is a sign of bullying, and either you address it or take it to another adult who can address it. And then finally, I would say social emotional learning for both our students and our staff members, right? Building that capacity of what does kindness look like? What is kindness? What does kindness look like? What does it mean when you stand up for everyone, not just yourself or not just the people who look like you or talk like you? So making sure that we're empowering them with that social emotional learning so they know that bullying is not acceptable in any shape or form and what they can do to prevent bullying. But I would say as schools, many schools have a tolerance against bullying, but making sure that our staff members don't bring in their personal biases into it, and just being on the same page, every adult in the building, about what bullying is and what bullying is not.
Thank you so much, Dr. Edouard. And I like what you're saying, especially regarding the zero tolerance policy. We're going to touch on that in a moment, because you nailed it. Sometimes there could be some misdirection that would actually kill the purpose of the bullying prevention. So we will touch on that in a second. Of course, so you talk about training staff, school staff. The next question is going to be actually now empowering children at school through lesson and activities that they can do for them to also prevent and fight bullying. That question is going to be for Huguette. So school don't always need formal program to help students learn about bullying prevention. School can incorporate the topic of bullying prevention in lessons and activities. Can you please tell us, Huguette, more about some examples of activities to teach students about bullying?
Okay. Yeah. So some things that I've seen, like one thing that I saw at my son's school that I really like is that they, in front of like where bullying usually happens, right? The cafeteria, the gym, they have some signs there with images and all that talking about what bullying is. I think it's important for children to kind of explain what it means to be a bully. Some kids are bullies without even knowing that they're bullies. Explain what it looks like. And this can be done through like some videos. I've seen some cool videos on YouTube. Like what does it mean to be a bully? Explain
The technical team need to put that up, please.
Okay.
Just have it.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So yeah, explaining to them like through short videos, like and then also creating anti-bullying posters, for example. And those are the kinds that I've seen around my son's school and stuff like that. Role play, like Pastor Mercy, you mentioned before, role play is very important. And it helps people kind of identify that, okay, maybe what I did to this so-and-so is considered bullying. Because when they role play, then they're like, okay, maybe I need to stop doing that, right? And you can do other activities. One of my favorite that is like the wrinkled heart activity, where you have kids basically learn that before you speak, think, and be smart. It's hard to fix a wrinkled heart. Just paper shaped in heart that you have them turn into balls and then try to straighten it out. And you can see the impact of you like basically turning the paper into a ball. Like it's hard once you've like you bully somebody or you ruin their reputation or you hurt them, it's hard to kind of put them back to who they used to be before that happened. And also, do it in creative stuff like writing poems or plays for the school. And basically, there's a lot of activities that I think schools can do besides like in the classroom, so help kids kind of learn about bullying and how not to be a bully, and how to stop it, how to recognize it, and how to stop it. So
yeah, thank you so much, Huguette. We are now going to take a short break. Stay with us. We will get back to you in a few seconds. We are back. Many educators, health professionals, parents, and adults who interact with children and youth understand how serious bullying is. Although there are proven and promising bullying prevention and intervention strategies, some common methods do not work or can even make matter worse. Dr. Edward, I will start with you. Could you please enlighten us on zero tolerance policy? How could that lead to misdirecting in bullying prevention and intervention?
Okay. So basically, zero tolerance policies usually is, say you have a number of strikes, in most cases strikes, then you're suspended, etc. Or say if you're involved in a fight or whatever, that as long as you participated in it, like you're suspended or there's certain consequences. I know that zero tolerance policies have been criticized because it doesn't seem to take the totality of what is going on an individual basis, because it's just wrapped around policy, general policy. And we know that our children are different. We know their needs are different. And we can't necessarily have a one-size-fits-all policy for every situation. So, for example, I had a situation many, many years ago about a child who was involved in a fight. It was a large brawl, right? Like multiple fights that day. But according to policy, because they were involved in that large fight, they all had to be suspended. But then when I took the time to sit down with, there was a little girl there, I knew that this child was defending themselves because they're never a part of stuff like that. So it had gotten to the point where this girl felt like she had to fight to defend herself. And as an administrator, I had to make that hard decision to say, no, I cannot suspend this child because it's not a one size fits all. Like, what message am I sending to this child? Like, you cannot defend yourself? Like, so, you know what I mean? So that was a very difficult decision, not following policy, but knowing in my heart that I was doing what was right as a human being, but especially for the child, because I knew the situation much more than what the policy states. But I think as school leaders, as school staff members, we need to have conversations with children so they don't feel like reporting anything will get them in trouble, get them suspended, get them to be a target of other adults or other children in the building, making sure that we create a safe space for them where they know that if they report bullying, that there are not any retaliatory policies against them by either the bully or other children or even other adults, making sure that, they have some sort of mediation, like, bringing in those students in together as a group, the bully versus the bully, of course, with parent permission and depending on the severity of the case. And also sometimes bringing those parents together, because sometimes once a child goes home, sees this, it becomes very toxic, dealing with all the parents involved and all that stuff. But making sure that we're treating children individually, because their situations are all different. And with zero tolerance policies, you call them that they may misdirect. I would say they misdirect because the adults are not taking the time to learn about the children, building the relationship with the children, and or understanding the context of what's going on. And it's really important that we do those and not just necessarily have a blanket policy, because we could actually be hurting the child who's been bullied.
Yeah. Wow. Dr. Edward, you say so many things. Earlier on, we talked about, was discussing about explaining to us, teaching our children emotional intelligence. But we also as administrator and you as principal, you just gave the perfect example where you had to use emotional intelligence to really assess the case of some of those children that were involved in that fight. Because you know your students, just like as a parent, technically you should know your child. So when something is being told about you on your child, I'm not saying that you should right away dismiss it, but at least give a benefit of doubt. Yeah. And try to go deeper. Try to investigate a little bit more. Don't just go by what you are seeing, but also with the past that you know from that child or that student, their track record, and then something that is coming up that is totally contradictory to what you know about them. All of that should really help you to pause and say, okay, I know the school as a principal, we do have a policy, tolerance policy, but in this case, should that policy be applied to this child, to that student or not? And being able also to justify, because there could be some backlashes. But as a principal and as adult, being able to make sure that whichever decision we take, that could be the exception to the rule, we have the backup information to stand on. Very critical. Don't just stand by the rule, but because even with the law, there is the rule, there is the exception, there is jurisprudence. So you need to be able to really navigate through all of that. Thank you so much, Dr. Edward, for explaining that. We also know that conflict resolution and peer mediation are common strategies for dealing with issues between students. Because of this, school may use this method to address bullying problems. However, this could also lead to misdirection. Huguette, could you please expand on conflict resolution and peer mediation? How could that be a misdirection toward bullying prevention? We're going to have it on the screen.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that question. Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind when you hear about conflict resolution or mediation, you have two people on the same page, like not agreeing on something, and so we're trying to mediate. But bullying is not like that, right? In bullying, there's a victim and there's the bully. So bringing those two together to try to mediate is putting some type of blame on the person being bullied, and that's kind of unfair. I think, this goes back to what Dr. Edwards mentioned about the first misdirection is sometimes we have rules in place, we have policies in place, but we need to look at things on a case-by-case basis. If you're looking at conflict resolution because you have a child who had been like a bully himself or herself in the past, and in this case, the person is the victim, and you're trying to use conflict resolution or something, that's fine. But if you're dealing with somebody who's just a plain victim, and you bring in that person in the same room as the bully to try to mediate something or resolve the conflict, what are you doing? You're doing more harm than actually helping the victim in this situation. So I think it's important to make sure that we're not sending the wrong message, right? To the person, the kid being bullied. It's like, yeah, basically just saying, okay, you're a victim, but we want to make sure that we fix it, resolving this as a conflict, because it tells him that you have a part of responsibility in what happened, and that's not necessarily the case. So the message should be clear that the bullying is never okay. It's never okay. And I think you have to address it. The kids in this situation needs two different types of not conflict resolution. The situation needs to be addressed differently for the victim and for the bully. So I think that's where this conflict resolution and peer mediation can cause more harm than it actually helps.
Yeah, absolutely, you get. And I believe that's why earlier on, Dr. Edward was explaining that it's critical to train school staff properly so that they know the different type of situation, and they can identify also the type of bullying that is going on and who is bullied, the party that are involved. Because sometimes also even the students that were just watching themselves also into a big mess. Like getting all of them called into a principal office and then just having now this one rule applied to all of them.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for explaining on that. Dr. Edward, we also know that sometimes schools tend to quickly use simple, short-term solutions. But please tell us, how could that also be a misdirection in bullying prevention and intervention? We're going to see it on the screen.
Okay, so schools may tend to use short-term bullying prevention strategies because either they don't want the bullying to become widespread and or overwhelm the culture and climate of the school, or they may use some short-term strategies where they bring it to parents. Say, for example, if you notice that there are pockets of bullying taking place in the building, what you can do is, outside of having those conversations with staff and having those conversations with students, like you have an anti-bullying assembly where you talk to students about the signs of bullying, what you should do as the person being bullied and as the bystander. You can also teach, especially for younger students or like students with disabilities, you can teach them social stories, right? So you make those stories shorter and at their level so they can understand it. So even if there are cognitive differences there, they're still able to understand that hurting someone is wrong, right? Also, they can bring it, like I said earlier, they can bring it to the attention of the parents, because then that alerts parents. Sometimes not all parents attend PTA meetings, but in most schools after PTA meetings, like the minutes are sent out, and even those parents who don't attend are kept abreast of what's going on in the school or at least in the building. So at least they're aware they can have those conversations at home. It's also important, and this is why it's important for schools to communicate with parents at least each week. At my school, I send out a newsletter to my staff every Monday, and I send out a newsletter to my parents every Sunday, right? So they know what's going on, what are some of the concerns, what's coming up, what are celebrations, all those sort of things. So we create an authentic community where we're all on the same page and we know what a problem is and how we can address those problems. I think this says, although each of these efforts is an important piece of bullying prevention and intervention strategy, none of these alone is sufficient. So again, that's why I said earlier, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, because we have kids with different personalities, different needs. We have schools with different climate and culture, different staff capacity, right, to deal with bullying and other issues. So that's the reason why it's really important to take different approaches in order to address the issue. One thing schools should never do, though, is try to sweep it under the rug and say, oh, they're kids, or, this will blow back, because no, it doesn't. You're literally, if you have that approach, then you're literally encouraging children to be terrorized. And as adults, that is the last thing I think any one of us signed up to do, or any one of us should really go to bed at night saying, okay, I went to bed at night today knowing I didn't do anything in my power to help or support this child or make this child feel safe.
Yeah. And Dr. Edward, you just mentioned something. Sometimes the school may notice packet of bullying going around. And because of that, they may decide to do group treatment for children who bully. I'm going to address this question to Huguette. In fact, please tell us in such case how the group treatment for children who bully can become a misdirection in bullying prevention and intervention. We will see it on the screen also. Over to you, Huguette.
Yeah, I think, there's nothing more empowering than being in a group, right? That's why we see riots and all that. When people find themselves in a group, they feel so powerful. So I think this can, it can work, but you have to be careful so it doesn't turn into children basically empowering each other more, right? To even bully others even more. So I think the intentions there are right, but the behavior can get worse because you find yourself with somebody else who is a bully, and you give yourself new ideas to go out and bully people. It just makes it worse. So I think there are some limitations to this, even though the intentions are right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it makes sense, you get, because it's just like, inmates in jail.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. Usually it's the one that is the more aggressive that become literally like the leader,
mm-hmm.
and then teaching the others how to be more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a school, we may not think of it. The idea may be, okay, let's get, all the kids who bully together to go through prevention measure. But just like what you said, that can turn into something else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because now he can see, okay, this one is actually more aggressive than I. How can I get to do that next time? So you might end up getting the opposite result than what you were thinking to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we are almost at the end of our talk show. Before we close that, I would like to see what the federal law in the United States has or is covering regarding bullying. The question will be for you, Dr. Edward. Are there federal laws that apply to bullying? And we will have it also on the screen.
So I don't believe that there's any sort of like a blanket federal. Okay, so there are no blanket federal laws addressing bullying per se, but there are laws that focuses on discrimination, harassment. They do overlap, right? They do overlap. And for the most part, they tend to cover everything: a student's race, gender, color, national origin, disability, or religion. So usually when any of these, and usually when children bully, it usually impacts one of those, whether it's discrimination or creating a hostile environment for them, or harassment, etc. So it is a civil rights issue, right? It is a civil rights issue. And so while there are no laws that directly govern bullying, as an administrator, I can use some of these harassment and laws, anti-harassment laws in the books to explain to a student, hey, this is where this can take you to. And this is what you don't need for yourself. You don't need it for your families, because our children are children. They're growing. And sometimes until you spell it out to them, they don't know any better. And sometimes we make assumptions that they come from families or homes where they have these discussions, but sometimes they don't. They honestly don't. So it is our role, it is my role as an educator to not necessarily judge them, but to educate them on what the laws say, what kind of and what consequences can happen. Like maybe at school you bully, the most you can get might be a suspension. But if you do this out there, you may get arrested, you may get prosecuted, and your family might get into a situation where they're facing a civil rights issue. So just educating our children that, this is what the law is, and even though it doesn't address it, that there are other ways. The law that we currently have points to bullying and how the federal government is trying to ensure that people are not in positions where they feel unsafe or discriminated against.
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Edward. And just like you've mentioned, there is no federal law in place. However, some of the things that the law has put in place can overlap. And we as parents, we need to understand one thing, especially if your child is the one bullying. If the school is not taking the appropriate measure to stop it and make your child to behave, the parent of the bullied child has resources available. And that's what I'm going to get into in a moment. With the federal laws, when the situation is not properly resolved with school, as parent of a child who's being bullied, you can file a formal grievance with the school district. This is what I really want to pound on, because many parents from the diaspora don't know what to do. I've had friends that, the kids were bullied at school, not even by other children, but by teachers. Mm. By teachers in the classroom, literally being physically aggressive to the child. And because the parents are immigrants, they didn't know what to do. The mom called the school to talk about it. Because she had an accent, the person on the phone was making fun of her. Hmm. Yes. Then the dad went to school to talk about it. Because he had accent, they dismissed what he was saying. And the case didn't go far. That is not acceptable. There is process that, there are things that are available, but had they known, they could have, act on it, because definitely something like that for a teacher to physically aggress a child, it should not just be put under the rug. Dr. Edward said, schools are not supposed to do it, but sometimes they do it, because a bad rating to the school is also not good for them. And not all teachers are meant to be teachers in school. Let's just face it. Especially with, this Zin generation children, it is hard, to manage them, to teach them. And you truly have to have the love of teaching to be able to stand what is going on in our school, especially when it's public school. At least with private, there is still, some, how would I say it? Some safeguard around, because you are paying your money. But when you come to public school and you have no other choice as a parent, and also as immigrant parent to send your child, you better inform yourself. You better educate yourself so that when things like this happen, you know what to do. And like Dr. Edward said, you could also contact the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights and the U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division for help. It is unfortunate sometimes behavior can become criminal. For example, when a violent crime or threat to commit such a crime is motivated by bias against a person or group with specific characteristics, then it is called a hate crime. It happened also sometimes in school. We may not see it much, in middle school or high school, but in university, it does happen. It does happen. That's why the law is there to put those preventive measures around and make students feel safe when they go to school. I will not be talking about all the detail on the remaining resources. I will make sure to have it at the top of this video with phone numbers that parents can call and get help when things like this happen. There are resources available. Please don't keep quiet, because if you do, you are not making justice for your child. And that child will grow up frustrated, hating going to school, and now can eventually become a problem for the society. Huguette, let's go back again to your book before we close out. In which languages are your book available, and how can we get it for parents that are interested?
Okay, so the book is available in English and in French, and parents can get it on Amazon. And I really recommend parents to get it, not because I wrote it, but because I think the stories with it's geared toward like parents and kids who have discussions around bullying with those stories that are not, they're not meant to make the kid feel scared or anything, but just to equip you to know what to do, whether you're being bullied or you see somebody getting bullied, there's anything you can do about it. So the people can get it on Amazon.
Absolutely. And of course, parents, when we get it, let's not just read it and put it, in our
Right.
It has to be intentional, reading it with the child, and then role playing, like we talk about. Really be intentional about buying the book. Just don't buy it, read it, and then put it on the, somewhere, and then that's it. No, it has to be among one of those resources that you have available, and then you and your child can go back to from time to time.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Edward and Huguette, thank you so much for your time. It has been a great pleasure having you. Before letting you go, we would like to hear about the last word that you have for parents, for students, and also for educators, whether in the United States or overseas and worldwide. I will start with you, Dr. Edward.
So this has been a very fruitful conversation, and I really appreciate you, Pastor Mercy, for taking the time. We don't always focus on issues like this, but really, and as I'm sitting here talking, I'm thinking about this and other topics in my head. I'm like, we need to talk about these things a little bit more in a transparent way. Huguette, I definitely will be following up with you once I return, because I would like to have a number of your books, and I would appreciate it if they could also have it in Spanish, because I do have some Spanish speaking students also, and I don't want to leave them out of it. But so I'll definitely be following up with you after January 9th. Okay. But this has been very helpful. As adults, the parents as parents, we need to take the responsibility about knowing about our students, our children, having those conversations with them, doing everything within our power to ensure that they are safe and that they're happy, and that we create conditions for them to thrive. It's the same charge that I have as an educator, ensuring that I do everything in my power to ensure that the children who are entrusted to me day by their parents are in a situation and in a space where they can thrive, they can feel loved, and get the education that they need for their future development.
Yeah.
So thank you, ladies, and this has been very, very helpful.
Thank you so much, Dr. Edward. We would like to hear Huguette about your final word for our viewers.
Okay, thank you so much for having me again. This has been great, like Dr. Edward said. And I'd like to thank you for bringing this topic to your platform. I think a lot of people are going to benefit from it. And it's good to talk about topics like that. And thank you, Dr. Edwards, for your contribution and for what you do as a principal. It's hard to be a principal these days. So thank you for what you do. And we really appreciate principals because it's hard. And I think for parents, like we mentioned it many times, don't dismiss what your kids say, and observe. Don't just send your kids off to school, they come back home and you start another day and that's all. Make sure you're observing, and if there are changes in your children, that you're talking about them and that you're addressing them. And for kids, you go out there and be nice to other kids. It's not complicated. Yeah, you don't need to be mean to be noticed. I think because that's one of the problems too. If you want to be popular, maybe you have to be mean. No, you can be the nicest person in the school and be popular. So be that kind of person, be nice and popular, not mean and popular. And I think if everyone does their part, we're going to live in a better society, and we will not be talking about bullying anymore, because we've lost way too many lives, children's lives, due to bullying, and it's not even necessary. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you so much, Huguette and Dr. Edward. As we've seen it, when adults respond quickly and consistently to bullying behavior, they send the message that is not acceptable. Research shows this can stop bullying behavior over time. Like Huguette is hoping for, parents, school staff, and other adults in the community can help kids prevent bullying by talking about it, number one, by building a safe school environment, and also creating a community-wide bullying prevention strategy. Training school staff and students also to prevent and address bullying can help sustain bullying prevention efforts over time. Of course, there are no federal mandates for bullying curricula or staff training. So we really hope that this conversation will help each stakeholder to know what to do and to take a stand whenever they see a bullying case. Dr. Edward, Huguette, it's been such a pleasure having you. Thank you so much. I hope this won't be the last time having you on this platform to educate, train, mentor, and also give resources to our community. So I'm very grateful for your time. Thank you so much for staying with us. Precious women of valor, precious men of valor, dear viewers, this is the end of our discussion today. I will see you next Friday for another topic. So again, please share this talk show to help others around you, and stay safe during this holiday time.